Ride the signal through the unknown. This is the cryptic current.
The steady beep of the heart monitor suddenly flatlined, replaced by a frantic, static-filled alarm that pierced the sterile silence of the room. John Doe opened his mouth to scream, but the sound that emerged was not his own. It was the guttural, wet cough of a man drowning in a river he'd never seen. The doctors froze, their instruments falling silent as the scent of ozone and damp earth suddenly filled the air, thick enough to taste. He tried to speak again, but his vocal cords produced the sharp, metallic scrape of a shovel hitting frozen ground, a sound that scraped against the bones of everyone present. A primal dread took hold of the room, a palpable weight that made the air feel thick and cold, like the touch of a tomb. His own hands, now trembling violently, felt foreign to him, as if they remembered the sticky texture of pine sap and the cold grip of a mountain rock he had never held. This was not a medical anomaly. This was an echo, a voice, a memory, a final sensation from a life that was not his, forcing its way out through his flesh. This wasn't a possession. It was a medical enigma, sealed inside a man named Leo. The last words he ever spoke in his own language were to his wife, Sarah. "I don't feel right." Then, the darkness swallowed him whole. Cut to black. Title card. The man WHO spoke in tongues he never knew. Sound of a backyard barbecue. In Austin's golden hour glow, Leo and Sarah Miller's life was a portrait of quiet contentment. Leo, a gentle graphic designer, found solace in his worn vinyl collection and the scent of smoldering brisket. Sarah, his vibrant opposite, brought order and energy as a school librarian, the meticulous planner to his thoughtful dreamer. Their home hummed with laughter, sizzling sounds, and the gentle strum of an acoustic guitar, a symphony of ordinary happiness. Their grandest adventure was a weekend in Cancun 5 years ago. Leo's Spanish limited to "Gracias" and "Donde está la cerveza?" In the sterile glow, the memory felt like a relic from another life. A faint, metallic scent, like old pennies, lingered in the air. It started with a headache. The pain wasn't just a headache. It was a vice behind the eyes that defied even the strongest medication. Then came the dizziness, a sickening vertigo that sent Leo collapsing to the floor of his home office. He lay there, surrounded by his scattered work, the sharp scent of ink and paper filling the air. Sarah now sits vigil by his bed, her fingers tracing the cool, dry skin of his motionless hand. Leo lies pale and motionless, tethered to an IV drip. A faint, medicinal scent hangs in the cold air. His voice is a fragile whisper. "Leo." It's like a radio stuck between stations in my head, all static. Archer, his voice a measured calm, assured Sarah they were exhausting every diagnostic avenue. MRIs, EEGs, possibilities narrowing to complex migraines or a rare seizure disorder. Yet the tests returned nothing conclusive. Each scan a silent, frustrating blank, leaving Leo's condition shrouded in medical mystery. Discharged with more questions than answers, Leo returned home, but the static in his mind didn't fade. It swelled, a rising tide of dissonant noise. The hum grew louder, an oppressive weight pressing against his senses, carrying with it a faint, acrid scent like ozone, and something older, more unsettling. The static developed rhythms, alien patterns Leo couldn't decipher. He became withdrawn, his nerves frayed to a hair trigger. In the dead of night, he'd wake Sarah, whispering that he heard voices in the walls. But the whispers weren't in English. They carried the scent of ozone and a cold, sticky dread. The next morning, in the Miller kitchen, Sarah quietly brewed coffee. The air was thick with the scent of dark roast and something faintly metallic. Leo staggered into the room, his face pale, one hand pressed hard against his temple. Sarah turned, her voice a tentative whisper in the sudden stillness. "Honey?" Leo's gaze locked onto her, pupils dilated with raw terror. His mouth parted, and a guttural, liquid sentence began to flow out. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and damp earth. His words weren't spoken. They poured, viscous and raw. Each syllable felt cold and sticky against the silence. A primal dread settled in the room, heavy and suffocating. Panic had stolen his voice, replacing it with something ancient and flowing. The sound was less speech, more a violation of the quiet. Leo's voice was a strained whisper. Lìhai, salita iliang. His own words seemed to register a moment later, and he froze, his hand clamping over his mouth in horror. Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her fingers. It struck the floor with a sharp, ceramic shatter that echoed in the sudden stillness. The sharp scent of spilled coffee filled the air, mixing with the cold, metallic taste of fear. A primal dread settled over the room, thick and heavy. What was that?" Sarah breathed, her voice barely audible, as if the air itself had grown dense enough to choke sound. Leo's voice trembled, foreign and raw. He tried to complain of a headache, but something else clawed its way out of his throat instead. Back in the neurology wing's stark silence, the sterile scent of antiseptic hung thick in the air. Dr. Archer leaned forward, his fascination now edged with a cold, clinical dread. This wasn't a symptom he could chart. It was an intrusion. The linguist, Dr. Evelyn Reed, was called in. Analyzing the spectral recording, her voice came out low and certain. That's Mandarin Chinese. The Hokkien dialect was flawless, native level, to be precise. The phrasing wasn't textbook. It was purely idiomatic, exactly how a local would speak. "Tòng de lìhai," he said, and the air in the room grew heavy with the scent of ozone. Sarah's voice cut through the silence, sharp with disbelief. He's never learned Chinese, and it didn't stop. The static in Leo's mind had become a revolving door of voices. When a nurse drew blood, he flinched, and a stream of rapid, poetic Arabic cursed the sharp pain. The metallic scent of blood mixed with sterile alcohol filled the air as his body tensed, not from the needle, but from the foreign words now his own. Sarah's yellow bouquet made him sigh in flawless, aristocratic French, mourning their transient splendor. Afterward, he'd spend minutes sweating, trembling, struggling to reclaim his English, now clumsy and alien on his tongue. The air in the room turned thick with ozone and the faint metallic scent of fear. Dr. Archer leaned close to Sarah, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's called xenoglossy, the spontaneous speaking of an unlearned language. It's a phenomenon so rare most physicians dismiss it as medical folklore. But it's happening right now. His mind is accessing a linguistic database that doesn't belong to him." Sarah. How? Leo's deterioration was now complete, leaving him mostly silent, terrified of what might emerge if he opened his mouth. On the rare occasions he did speak, his voice became a chaotic conduit for languages he'd never learned. Snippets of Russian, Swahili, and even a dead dialect of Aramaic, identified by a stunned theology professor, spilled from his lips. The man Sarah loved was being buried alive in a Tower of Babel, constructed within his own skull. His English had become a spectral echo, surfacing only in fractured, urgent whispers. "Help me. Lost. Sarah." Then, the seizures began. In the hospital room at night, darkness clung to every surface like damp velvet. Leo slept fitfully, tethered to a new machine whose soft hum was the only sound in the heavy, antiseptic air. Sarah drifted in the chair, her breathing shallow and uneven. A low, rhythmic sound began to permeate the room. Leo was murmuring in his sleep, but the sounds formed a monotone, complex pattern. It wasn't speech, it was something else, mechanical and chilling. The next day, Reed's face was ashen as he listened to the playback. A creeping ozone smell filled the room as he whispered, "This isn't a living language, or not a human one." His voice grew taut. The phonetics, the syntax, it doesn't match any known linguistic structure on Earth. The air grew heavy before he finished. It's either impossibly ancient, or... Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "Or what?" Dr. Reed's voice dropped to a whisper. "Or, it's not from here." The words hung in the air, thick with implication, as the scent of ozone sharpened. Then, the patient's body seized violently, monitors shrieking a code blue alarm. The air grew heavy, a palpable dread settling over the room as the emergency began. Leo's body contorted violently, every muscle straining against invisible bonds. The monitors erupted into a frantic electronic shriek, their piercing alarms cutting through the sterile air. As the medical team scrambled to stabilize him, a wave of ozone and cold sweat filled the room. Then his eyes snapped open. Calm, focused, and utterly devoid of fear. The void around him was absolute, a hollow expanse. From his lips, in a voice unnaturally deep and distorted, came words in that same impossible tongue. Each syllable hung in the air, cold and exact, like ice forming in the dark. For the first time, he wasn't just speaking a language, he was answering in one. The unspoken question hung in the air, heavy and final. Days later, Leo's room was a tomb of stillness. He sat motionless by the window, his gaze fixed on nothing. The only sound was the faint, irregular drip of a leaky faucet from another room. For 2 days, he hasn't made a sound. But Dr. Archer's scans reveal something terrifying. Deep within his mind, unprecedented neural activity surges. It's as if his consciousness has become a receiver, broadcasting only that one alien frequency. Sarah knelt before Leo, tears carving tracks through the grime on her cheeks. She took his limp, cold hands in hers, her fingers trembling against his unnaturally still skin. Her voice broke into a desperate whisper, choked with raw emotion. "Leo, please, it's me. Come back. Just say my name." Leo's head turns with agonizing slowness. His eyes lock onto her face. For a flicker, she sees him, the man she married, trapped behind a pane of glass. The scent of ozone and damp plaster hangs in the air, thick and heavy. Then the moment shatters, leaving only the hollow echo of what was lost. His lips parted. Sarah's breath caught. He spoke, his voice a soft, melodic phrase that seemed to hang in the damp air. The sound was beautiful, yet it carried an unsettling sweetness, like the scent of ozone after a storm. It coiled through the room, a tangible presence that brushed against her skin. In that moment, a primal dread took hold, rooting her to the spot. It sounds like a lullaby. Later, after analysis, Dr. Reed's voice comes out hollow. She speaks, the sterile air in the lab suddenly tasting of ozone and old paper. It's a dialect of Icelandic, an obscure one. The translation came through. "The snow here is not as pure as the light in your hair on our wedding day. Sarah shattered. It was the most exquisite thing he'd ever uttered, and he remained utterly unaware he'd spoken it. Sarah arrives at a long-term care facility. Leo remained frozen in the garden, an unresponsive statue amidst the living plants. A young language student sat nearby, her voice bright with enthusiasm as she played recordings. The scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine filled the air, thick and cloying. And this is Tagalog from the Philippines. The recording continued its eerie playback, the Tagalog eliciting no reaction from Leo. Then, a solitary bird chirped somewhere in the surrounding gloom. His head tilted just a fraction, a movement so slight it was nearly imperceptible. The air itself seemed to grow dense and watchful in that silent moment. His lips moved silently, forming words that had no sound. No cure was ever found. The quiet, brilliant mind from Austin was gone, replaced by a living archive. He became a vessel for every plea of love and cry of pain ever uttered. Yet he could not form a single sound of his own. Was it a neurological collapse? A psychic link to the collective human mind? Or something far more unsettling? The most terrifying question isn't what happened to Leo Miller. Consider this chilling thought. If every word we speak is merely borrowed, whose voice did he channel before that final, unearthly hush descended? The air grew thick with the metallic scent of ozone, as if reality itself had just been torn. Then, from that profound stillness, came a single, impossible whisper. A sound that held no meaning. It carried the weight of the abyss. It lingered for a haunting moment, a secret the universe refused to translate, before it was stolen away by a cold, relentless wind.
If the signal hooked you, subscribe and catch the next ripple.